Hi, my name is Ilya, and today we start a series of ScandiPWA tutorials. This series is made to help you to understand the very basics of ScandiPWA, and first of all we start with setup. Right now we offer a Docker-based ready-to-develop setup, and of course ScandiPWA can be set up to any Magento 2 ready server. So today you might get a better understanding and knowledge how to set up both cases. Let's start from the Docker-based setup. So first of all, we are cloning ScandiPWA base repository to our machine. It's available on GitHub. Okay, the very first step is to run a make cert command that will generate the certificate for us. Certificate is important due to ScandiPWA uses service worker heavily, and service worker has a limitation of working only with localhost or HTTPS served website. Right here we can put any password. Just don't make it too complicated. You will need to type it in a lot of times. That's it. So after it is done, in the repository we have just cloned, there is an opt folder that has a cert folder now with the following content. The key will be served by SSL term service that is defined within a Docker Compose SSL YAML config file. However, there is additional action you must perform on Mac, Linux, and Windows. It is to add a ScandiPWA certificate authority to your trusted storage. It is important to prevent some error messages to show up on your screen while you are loading the website. I will just ensure I have nothing running right now. Okay, so on the Mac, you need to open the keychain access, and then okay, so the one last thing we need to do is to add our certificate to the secure storage by importing items. Choose ScandiPWA-ca.pam. As you may see, it is not trusted right now, so the last thing you need is double click, expand trust, and choose always trust. Then just close. You are prompted for a password, for your system password, and actually we are good to go. You may check that this certificate is marked as trusted for this account. Unluckily, this UI is lagging right now, so you don't see it as trusted. Let's try to close it and open again. As you may see, it is with a plus in a blue circle, so that is fine, it will work for us. So for those who are not really tending to use Service Worker, this is an optional step, as I already explained, why we need a valid certificate. Nevertheless, to fully experience the ScandiPWA, we suggest to do this, or you can use any valid certificate you got on your server or on your local machine. That doesn't make any difference. Yes. The next thing we need to prepare is to add our default local domain to your etc hosts. So let's just use sudo vim etc host for this purpose. I have already added it, but nevertheless, just put your local IP address, that's 127.0.0.1 by default, and assign ScandiPWA local to it. Okay, now we are good to go for the next steps. As a reference, you might want to use a README for the repository we have just cloned that has a quick start guide. And let's check the requirements. As a reference to the steps we are doing right now, you can use a README from the repository we have just cloned, or just recently we released docs.scandipwa.com. As a reference to the steps we are doing now, you can use README file of ScandiPWA base, the repository we have just cloned. It has a quick start section that's really helpful. But for more details, we have just released our docs.scandipwa.com, where all the details are composed in a single place. So you might find it really useful. So let's check. Requirements like certificate and Docker, etc. are met on my machine. We have already cloned the repository. We have even went further and made a certificate. However, we have missed an export of Composer auth. Actually, that's important to export this environment variable exactly in the same CLI that you are about to run the entire setup, or add it to your bashrc or zshrc or any other proper file to preserve it for all your CLIs. The Composer auth just grants you an access to private Composer repositories that are used by Magento and any other big merchant available on the market. However, you do not need it to get your copy of ScandiPWA. I mean, all the repositories of ScandiPWA are public and do not need any specific credentials, registration, or keys to be added. I have already done this on my machine. It's already there. Please use your credentials. If you don't know how to get them, I suggest you to go to Magento 2 Marketplace and create at least one pair of access credentials. So the next step we're doing is we are pulling all our images that are needed for us. So Docker Compose YAML, let's just run it, and I will briefly go over the specific YAML files, and will explain the details. So for me, some images are already there. For you, you will see downloading or waiting for all your containers, for all your images, and that's absolutely fine. We have pre-built images to save your time and effort of your machine. So meanwhile, it is downloading and working. I will open an IDE and go briefly over the structure. Okay, let's just briefly go over the Docker environment structure. So the core of the entire setup is Docker Compose YAML that describes all the services we are using, like app, Varnish, Nginx, RenderTron, MySQL, Redis, MailDev, Elasticsearch, and some might be added, some might be removed. Depends on the situation. So the main container in our setup is app container. That is a PHP based container, so PHP FPM is running there, as well as entire Bootstrap script is also present in that container, and that's the biggest part of the setup. We will get to it in a while. Meanwhile, I will explain the Docker Compose.local that has local mappings to map your host machine to the container, so you can work on your host machine with the files. At the same time, these files are also changed in your container, and your changes are present in the container. Another file we have just included, it's Docker Compose SSL. That's exactly the one that describes SSL term container that gives us SSL termination. As you might know, Varnish does not handle it for us. At the same time, you or we might not need always a custom SSL termination service. Therefore, it's just pluggable as a separate file, as a separate service. So we are done with downloading all the images. So the next step is to run entire infrastructure. We just simply copy this command and execute it. Up-D means that once containers are started, your console is released. At the same time, the most important thing to control for the first minutes is an app container, app service, that does all the setup, all the necessary actions to set up entire Magento and install PWA as well. So let's run logs-f app to follow the application logs. So first of all, we're waiting for the MySQL service. It's up, so we are resolving the dependencies. At this point, if you might find that you might find an error message that composer auth is not set. It means that there was something wrong with composer auth and this variable is not passed to your Docker setup. So please ensure that you have exported, you have run this command in the same CLI terminal as you are running the setup until you have added this export to your bashrc config. So it downloads all the composer dependencies. It is installing them right now. At this time, for some reason, there are old versions of commands, or it might be used by a mistake. There is a composer, Docker compose Frontend container. If it is included for the first run, for the very first run, when you don't have Magento installed, you don't have an entire file structure in a SRC folder, that is just vendor right now. By default, you got just composer JSON and composer log. Until you got entire project installation, you must not use the front-end container because it is breaking the vendor folder permissions. We are working on the fix, but just for the reference, if you are in the such state like some modules cannot be installed, some composer cannot successfully download the modules and install Magento, just remove entire project and please run the app-d without the front-end, reclone the project and run it without the front-end service. So while we are waiting for the entire project to be installed, I will briefly go over what happens in the app container after we run app-d, or after we are restarting or recreating the container. So entire logic is encapsulated in deploy folder start shell script that does a lot of great things. Let's go to the very end where all the logic are called in the correct order. So let's just go briefly. So we ensure we are in the base path, that is var 3w public. We are running composer install. We are flushing Magento config. By the way, that's a workaround when you are using pipeline deployment and your Redis is still storing an alt config and it breaks actually. Then we apply database config, so we are configuring a user. As well, we are configuring persisted query. That's important. We will go over this a bit later when we got a working installation. Nevertheless, we got a Magento database migration. So actually we determine what is the current state of Magento database. If it's not installed, we are installing it. If it's installed but needs upgrade, we're running setup upgrade. It happens automatically. However, there might be some cases when modules were downgraded that we might require your manual action to downgrade the module with a new declarative schema. It's not required, but with an old approach with migration scripts, that was the case we could not handle automatically for you. Okay, then we are ensuring that we're creating an admin user. That's also important. Then we are configuring Redis, Varnish, setting the mode, development by default. We're installing PWA theme. We're compiling Magento, setting base URL, applying correct permissions, and flushing caches and ensuring that everything is set up. Okay. The other important thing here is to remember that ScandiPWA is done as a theme for a concrete store. Therefore, we are providing a dump, MySQL dump, together with the code, just to make sure there is something you can experience. You can feel the experience of ScandiPWA immediately. In order to achieve this, after running app-d, we should stop the app container just to make sure. We just Ctrl+C here in the logs to stop seeing the logs, to stop following the logs. We will stop the app container just to ensure that at the time we are importing the dump, Magento itself is not creating a new database. Okay, it is stopped, so now it is safe to recreate the database. And import the latest dump that has all the products, categories, configs, etc. And exactly for this reason, we have a dedicated command to add an admin user. Okay, after we have finished with dump importing, we can just run app-d again. Our app is starting. It starts all over again. However, we have a lot of modules already installed. So we are just continuing doing this. While we are waiting for Composer to finalize our setup, let's briefly go over the entire file structure of the Docker repository. So first of all, there is a build folder that has a Docker file and necessary scripts for each container. Next folder is deploy. That is quite interesting folder, a part of start shell script we have already discussed. There are also development, local, shared, staging, frontend folders that actually means environments. So right now we are using a local environment that has an application and env files, and you might notice already that there is an .application and .env files present in the root of the folder. These are the symlinks, and env is defining the entire environment in terms of versions, specific directories, home dirs for Composer, for RBN, for Node, ports, etc. While application has the necessary configuration for MySQL and Magento settings. These settings are used for Magento install. The same are used for Magento for creating Magento admin user, as well as Magento mode and Magento base URL. So once you are trying to change these values, like reconfiguring MySQL user or reconfiguring or changing Magento mode or changing the base URL, you should do this in this file and then just force recreate entire or actually just application container to achieve the switch. So you don't need to interact manually with Magento CLI or Magento admin panel. You can, of course, but just keep in mind that on the next recreation or on the next restore, the settings defined here in these files will be propagated again. Development and staging are exactly the same. These were preserved as a reference for the different environments, for the remote servers and might be slightly different, or application might have different configurations. These files can be also kept directly on the server, and this depends fully on your CI/CD and the logic behind the deployment. That is not the topic of the current tutorial. So after a while, when you see that message about FPM is running and ready to handle connections, that means our ScandiPWA was set up. Let's try to access it. First execution is quite slowly on Macs, and overall Docker setup might be found as quite slowly. We are fighting the issue. However, still, Docker gives us power and possibility to provide you with the entire setup packed with actually just a few commands, instead of multi-page how to set up guide. So as you might see, the initial template has already loaded, and right now GraphQL will resolve the specific content. In order to get a media, just follow the last step. Download the media. It's about 2 gigabytes for now. It will be cleaned up shortly, but still, and just extract it to PubMedia folder. Just put it there and extract with a tor command. What you need to keep in mind to notice during the installation, until you will see the message FPM is running, your attempt, it's loaded without the media. That's fine. We have not downloaded it yet. Until you find this message like FPM is running, accessing this URL will give you just a 502 error, and that's absolutely fine, just because PHP FPM is not running until the moment Magento is fully set up with correct permissions, etc. We are doing so just to prevent some problems, some issues when the automation script has not finished the work, and for example permissions are not up to date. You might get errors about the framework malfunctioning, and this error might get cached, and it's getting more and more tricky to make it working. Therefore, just please wait for this message until when it is displayed, the entire infrastructure is working fine. Okay. The next step, I will briefly explain you how we set up a new theme that is not built in this deployment, in this setup, or how you should what you have to do when you try to set up ScandiPWA on your existing Magento setup. So right now I'm getting inside the container. So I'm inside the container. It can be any Magento installation. So I'm running bin Magento just to ensure it is there. It seems to work. Okay, right now we have a list of all available commands. Let's find out ScandiPWA. There is a ScandiPWA theme bootstrap. But before that, if you do not use our setup and you are trying to add Magento ScandiPWA to your own Magento installation, the only thing you actually need is to run composer require ScandiPWA installer. I will get a method that it already exists. However, you will get it installed together with all the packages we are providing. And the next step you will have to do in order to make this work, you will have to run Magento Setup upgrade. So installer itself is installed to Magento, as exactly installer is providing the command we are about to use, ScandiPWA theme bootstrap. Okay, so we got installer installed. We got Magento Setup upgrade executed. I will not execute it right now. There is no need for me to do this. And right now you want to create a new theme based on ScandiPWA. So what you need is to run bin Magento ScandiPWA theme bootstrap, or you can shorten it, of course, and type a vendor name, for example Ilya, and the theme name, new theme. So what happens right now? First of all, there is a new folder created under app design frontend. It's ILJ new theme. And the next step that we are seeing right now, the necessary entry files are copied there, like fonts, configs, some public assets, and entry points for SRC. And right now we got a prompt for generating automatically registration PHP. That's just for your convenience. If we type Y and enter, we're set up. So let's check. I got an app design frontend ScandiPWA, just a while to update. It's ILJ new theme, and we got a theme entry point, the basics, the base files of theme available here. Okay, please run setup upgrade. That's important because our command we have just executed just generated a registration PHP. You can reply no and create it yourself. That's absolutely fine. Nevertheless, we have You can do it yourself and put it and create registration PHP yourself. It doesn't make a big difference for us. It's just for you, for your convenience. Or you can create it, reply yes, you will get it. You can adjust this file, the content of the file, before you run setup upgrade. A setup upgrade will register the theme, and it will be, and you will need to interact manually with some parts of the framework to make some adjustments to the theme for name or component name or type or anything you want to do. I believe you not. Okay, and the last step to make it work is to go to app design frontend to your theme. And here what you need to do is to execute npm install CI. CI is for using package log.json instead of package.json. And then the next command we want to be executed is npm run build. Double ampersand is to chain this command. So first of all, we install all the dependencies for the theme that is React based, and the npm run build will execute the webpack that actually builds a theme. So if we see no errors here, it means we are fine. You can double check by just going to your theme. Yes, wait for think and check Magento theme folder, where there is just one template, root.html, and the web folder with bundle.js, some icons, assets, etc. This means that the theme was generated properly, and we are good to go. We are good to go with testing. I hope this video will help you to set up ScandiPWA and will introduce you to the world of PWA e-commerce, and any suggestions are welcome. Meet us, creators of ScandiPWA, in Slack by just signing up on ScandiPWA.com, and have a happy coding. See you soon.